Alright, so today we're going to do some same stuff. We're still working with quadratics, but we're going to solve equations that are quadratic using factoring. So we're still going to do the factoring, but we're going to write equations to solve instead. And so a couple of things to start with. Let's say I have 7 times some number, but I want that product to equal 0. What has to be in that blank? What has to be right here? What can you multiply something by to equal 0? Okay? Everybody good up to that point? Alright, so I want you to tell me something about that equation. What can you tell me about x and y? At least one of them has to be what? 0. So either x is going to equal 0, or y is going to equal 0, or they could both equal 0. That's not normally going to happen, but that's the setup. Okay? So everybody kind of understand that? All right. So if I have what's different about that equation than the xy equals 0? There's a little bit more to it, right? But it's still 2 factors, correct? 1 factor, 2 factors. And what y'all just told me, what we talked about was, if this is a true statement, then either x equals 0 or y equals 0. So if this is a true statement, then either x minus 2 has to equal 0, or x plus 4 has to equal 0. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to set each factor equal to 0, and then we'll just solve those equations. So my solution here is x equals 2 and x equals negative 4. And so normally what you end up having, negative 4 and 2. So my solution ends up being x equals negative 4 and 2. Because both of these numbers would make this expression equal 0. Okay. All right. What questions do you have so far? We're not done yet, so. All right. Hopefully, this part should look kind of familiar to you. Because a lot of what we've been doing, the factoring results in this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start out with a quadratic equation, which is going to have the 3 terms. We're going to factor those 3 terms into 2 factors, set it equal to 0, both of the factors, and solve. Okay? So we won't have quite as many problems to do because there's extra steps. As far as, especially when we do the quiz, we'll probably have 6 instead of 8. But you need to be able to make sure you can do the factoring. So some of y'all are going to have to go back and learn a little bit more of that. You may need to go back and look at our previous notes from last week, or you may need to just really study the factoring that we do on these notes today. So let's get a couple of problems and see what we can find. Let's start with this one. It says solve 2x squared minus 11x equals negative 15. So the thing we just got through talking about was we know how to do this if we can get two factors equal to 0. But we don't have anything set equal to 0 up here. So the first step when you got an equation to solve is you need to get everything onto one side of your equation. So I need to move that minus 15 to the other side by adding. So 2x squared minus 11x plus 15 equals 0. So I got rid of the negative 15. So now what we're going to look at is the left side of that, the 2x squared minus 11x plus 15. And we're going to factor that just like we would have done the other day. So we'll start with drawing our box. I've noticed that as I've been grading a lot of the work, some of y'all have learned a different method to do this stuff on, I guess, in Khan Academy or YouTube or something. As long as your method is consistent, so you keep doing the same way, that's fine. You don't have to use this method if you can find another method you like that. This one just seems to be pretty simple for the majority of students. So first and last terms go in those two boxes. And then just like this past week, we multiply those two together. 2x squared times 15 is 30x squared. And then we factor 30x squared and see what factors will add up to the negative 11x. Okay, they got to add up to a negative, and this is one of the things I saw a lot of issues with on the quizzes. If I'm finding the factors of a positive number, the factors have to be the same. They can't one can't be positive, one can't be or negative. You got to have them both positive or both negative. But since they got to add up to a negative, both of my factors are going to be negative. So my first one is always just negative x and negative 30x. And then we know 2 goes into it 15 times, so negative 2x and negative 15x. And 3 goes into negative, or to 30 10 times, so negative 3x and negative 10x. I still don't have anything adding up to negative 11 yet. 4 doesn't work. So negative 5x and negative 6x, and that adds up to negative 11x. So that's what we're going to use in the box. Okay, and then to continue the box piece, you look at each row and see what factor they have in common. And so when I look at this, I know the factors of 5 are just 1 and 5. Or in this case, a negative 1, negative 5 times. Is the 5 also a factor of the 15? Yes. So because this is a negative, the x here, that'll be a negative 5 out there. Because the 5 is a factor of both the 5 and the 15. Okay? Up here. And because this is positive 2, this will be a positive here. We know both of these have an x, so I'm going to put the x out there. And the factors of 2 are 1 and 2. Is the 2 also a factor of the negative 6? Yes. So that'll be 2x there. So our first factor is 2x minus 5. Now we look at this column here. Both of them have an x. The factors of 2 are 1 and 2. The only one of those that's also a factor of the negative 5 is the 1. So I don't need to put that. So just x there. Then these here, this top one is negative, so we'll make it a negative. And then the factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. 6 is not a factor of 15, but 3 is. So 3 is my common factor. My second factor is x minus 3. And then I have my equal 0 out to the side. Okay, so this is where we would have stopped this past week. Because you got it factored. And so this is why I told y'all, if you improve your score on this quiz, I'm okay with changing it because you're doing some of the exact same work. Okay? You just have to do a little bit more. And so the little bit more part is, if these two factors multiplied together equal 0, that means that 2x minus 5 has to equal 0, 4x minus 3 has to equal 0. And so then I solve those two equations to find out what x would be. Over here, add 5 to both sides, so 2x equals 5. And then divide by 2, so x equals 5 has 4, for some of y'all, 2.5. So that's the first one. And then over here, I will add 3 to both sides, which gives me x equals 3. So those are my two solutions. So I'll write it just x equals 2.5 and 3. So the setup of the factoring, I think, is still the harder part. Once you get the factors, solving isn't as difficult. Okay. Having said that, on your quiz, I guarantee you that I will have at least one question that'll just look like something like this, where it's already factored for you. Okay? So you can still get some credit even if you aren't really good at the factoring part. So we'll give you at least one problem like this. So that's all you would do with that one, is just what I've done underneath here. Because it's already ready. Okay. All right, how many of us are still pretty confused? No? No responses at least? All right. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to solve this equation by factoring. So we have x squared minus 18 equals negative 7x. So what are we going to do here? Yeah, first thing, I got to do that 7x to the other side. Because I need a 0 there. So I need to add 7x. Cancels out over here. I got 0. And then I'm going to put the plus 7x in the middle here. So it'll be x squared plus 7x minus 18. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a shortcut for this kind of problem. When there's not a number out here in front of x squared, all you're going to be doing is factoring this to see what adds up to the 7x. So let's factor negative 18. That would be negative 1 and 18, negative 2 and 9, negative 3 and 6. So those two add up to that 7 in the middle. So as long as there's not a number out here, I don't have to go through the box. It still works, but I don't need to. Because I can go straight from this to my factor. When there's not a number out there, my first term in each factor is going to be an x. There's no other option there. Okay? My second terms are going to be the two things that added up to it. So a negative 2 and a positive 9. Okay? So you take out a little bit of the time constraints on the factoring if you can do it without the box. The box is very helpful when you have that number out here in front of x squared. Okay? It's a little bit more consistent, a little bit more understandable. Um, it's not as easy to make the mistakes as it is if you try to do this method when there's a number out there in the front. There's a lot of mistakes that can be made. Um, I will tell you when I was going through it, and I put the number out here. I didn't use the box method in school. I used a little bit different, but mine was all guess and check. And so I did a lot of factoring and a lot of FOIL method stuff. Check my answers, and when my answers didn't work, I had to start over. I've learned that a lot of us do not like to do that because I hear the phrase "that's too much" all the time. Okay, and so I try to give you one method that works every time. And that is that box method. All right, and if you do it correctly, you don't have to worry about going back and checking it as much. And once you get to this point, now that I've got my factors, I know that x minus 2 has to equal 0, or x plus 9 has to equal 0. And so when I solve those, x is going to equal 2 or negative 9. So my solution. I always put these in order from least to greatest, so in this case negative 9 comes before the 2. All right, what questions do you have? It's a little bit easier if that number's not out here in the front. Do what? Um, these are called the roots or the solutions to the problem, and or the zeros. And here's like if I'm graphing, the important part of this, these two spots where it crosses the x-axis, that's what we're finding. Okay, so as far as the graph is concerned, and in kind of a real world setup, that's where a lot of stuff happens. This kind of stuff is used a lot when you're talking about anytime you're launching something. So a space shuttle, a rocket, a missile. Because you're talking about starting here at 0 and hopefully landing at the point you want it to. And so you gotta have to know the arc, you have to know the length, that kind of stuff. And so that becomes a pretty big issue. There's also times when you're going to need to know the area underneath the curve, and so you'll need to know the distance that it goes from one to the other. Any other questions? That's the reason why we fight it. And that's the reason for factoring too. So those of you that kind of were confused this past week about why we even doing that factoring thing. Right, we've only got the 5 minutes, so let's kind of wrap up and talk about it very quickly. You're probably going to have about 6 problems, 7 problems to do tomorrow in class, and that'll be through these problems. But this video will still be up here, so you'll still be able to look at it. My hope is that you can get the factoring done, and if you have not been able to, and if your score on that quiz was really, really bad, and some of y'all, there were zeros up to 50 out of 15. So if your score was at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of scores, then we need to talk about making sure you're understanding the factoring side. So as we start, probably during that Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to put an assignment out for us to work on. But I'm also going to make sure we got some factoring kind of workshops going on for a lot of us, because after looking at the scores, it seems like there's a lot of us that are still struggling. And we seem to get the scores okay on the homework when we turn it in, which means a lot of us are just copying stuff off the computer, but not actually trying to learn it from the computer, or copying off somebody else and not trying to learn it. So just copying work does not get it into your head. You need to make sure you're understanding the steps that are happening as you're doing that copying. Or I'll just, for the rest of the year, just assign all your assignments will be due at the end of the class period. And you don't get to take them out of the classroom. I don't want to do that because a lot of us won't finish. Any questions? Nope.